Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov gang. Tonight, sleeper cells, the immigration component of the threat. Our very special guest with us this evening, Michael Cutler, former senior INS special agent. Michael, what an honor and a privilege to have you back on the Glazov gang.
Always great to join you and work with you. You guys do a great job of getting vital information out there.
Thank you. And Michael, you do a great job by getting the information out there that I don't think anybody's getting out there, so especially in terms of this issue. So thank you so much for everything that you're contributing. Tonight we're focusing on sleeper cells. What a scary, frightening topic. And let's see what you're going to tell us this evening. Before we do, very briefly, tell our viewers who might not know a bit about your background.
Sure. I was an INS agent for about 30 years. I'm a New Yorker. Started my career back in 1971 as an immigration inspector. Did that job for about 4 years. Spent the year doing the marriage interviews as an adjudicator. Became a special agent in 1975. In 76, I tripped over my first terrorist investigation. We prevented an attack in Israel. I became the first INS agent assigned to the Unified Intelligence Division of the Drug Enforcement Administration. I was promoted to the position of Senior Special Agent with the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, where I served for the last 10 years of my career. During the interim, I rotated through all the squads within the investigations branch in New York. Testified before, I think we're up to 16 congressional hearings in both the House and Senate. Been called by both political parties. Provided testimony to the 9/11 Commission. And I've testified before state legislative hearings around the United States. How's that for a thumbnail?
Wow, thank you very much. What an honor to have you here. Michael Cutler, what is a sleeper agent, and therefore, what is a sleeper cell?
Okay, a sleeper agent generally, and this is why I'm so troubled by the way the politicians are spinning the language. Usually, and like when Robert Mueller, the head of the FBI, testified before the Intelligence Committee in Congress, a sleeper agent is an individual, generally a foreign national, who manages to gain entrance into a country either legally by coming in through the inspections process at a port of entry or by sneaking across the border or stowing away on a ship. The point is to get here. And once here, they keep a low profile, hence the term sleeper. They don't call attention to themselves, kind of like a spy. You know, somebody once said that a good spy wouldn't attract the attention of a waiter or waitress at a greasy spoon diner. You could say the same thing about a sleeper agent. Their job is to be very low-key, not get arrested, smile at the neighbors, make sure there's not too much crabgrass on their lawn. Nobody pays attention to them, and they're waiting for the day that the phone rings or they get a tap on the shoulder when they're called into action to carry out an attack against the United States.
Now, in our media and our culture, you've written about how this term homegrown has been attached to sleeper agents.
Yes.
How and why, and what do you think about it?
Well, I think it's all part of the narrative. They want everybody to forget about the immigration component to national security. You know, when you talk about any other subject on TV, if they talk about the military, they bring in former generals. If they talk about an epidemic, they bring in epidemiologists, pathologists, and doctors. Talk about immigration, they bring in radio talk show hosts. They talk about bringing in a political advisor. Immigration is as much a part of national security as is our military. You know, the military's primary objective is to keep America's enemies as far from our shores as possible. Doesn't matter which branch. But right now, we have unknown millions of foreign nationals from virtually every country on the planet living in towns and cities across the United States. This poses a huge threat to national security and public safety and all the other issues hammered by immigration. And just about every threat and challenge we face is being hammered because we don't have control of our borders and we're not enforcing the immigration laws. And one quick point, we're a country of 50 border states, not just 4 border states. That's another part of the narrative. Once we secure the Mexican border, everything is fine. The reality is that aliens enter the United States through the northern border, the southern border, through ports of entry such as international airports and seaports. We're a country of 50 border states. The mission, if you will, for both political parties and people with this agenda is to minimize the true significance of immigration and the true significance of our borders so that the globalists, the folks that I call the immigration anarchists, can get what they want, and what they want, no borders, and the free flow of workers, students, and tourists across our borders for money.
Well, this is it, Michael. Like, for instance, we see the Charlie Hebdo massacre. And, I mean, why were those murders even in France to begin with? When we look at the 9/11 terrorists, what were they doing here? And so there's an issue of how they get in, and then there's an issue of how they're able to stay with immigration fraud. So there's a problem with border security, and then there's a problem with how they use fraud to trick us and to stay.
That's right. And all we're hearing is we're going to process all these people and get them out of the shadows. You know, these so-called dreamers. I mean, I wrote a piece for Fox News Latino. I said that when the president talked about prosecutorial discretion, it more appropriately should have been called prosecutorial deception. Up to age 31, these aren't children, but he kept hammering the word children because Americans melt when we hear about children. He said that they would get them out of the shadows. Well, here's the problem. No face-to-face interview, no field investigation. When Snowden did what he did, and we could have a debate about whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, I think he's truly a mixed bag in my judgment. But everybody screamed about how we gave him a security clearance. But the same members of Congress who scream about Snowden, who screamed about the Navy Yard shooter in D.C. who shot up the CIA, how do they give these people security clearances, stand behind a program that would give millions of aliens who snuck into the country? Remember, if you run the border, you are an entrant without inspection. As an agent, that was the term. We used to call them EWI, EWIs for short, entered without inspection. They snuck in. Nobody would get on an airplane if they saw people sneaking past the inspectors, the TSA folks. Yet we are now living among millions of foreign nationals. We know nothing about them. We don't know their name. We don't know their country of citizenship. We don't know when they got here or why they came. And, you know, if you look at every terrorist attack that we've had since 93, Kansi, January 93, Pakistani national, applies for political asylum, gets a job driving a courier van, has access to the CIA compounds, he's scoping them out. A month later, we have the first attack at the World Trade Center. Ramzi Youssef applies for and receives political asylum. Mahmoud Abu Alima gets agricultural amnesty, a la Chuck Schumer's amnesty of the '86 program. He was the one that was pushing for agriculture. The 2001 attack, every one of those aliens involved came here with visas, lied on their applications, lied to the inspectors, and hid themselves in plain sight. The Tsarnaev brothers, same deal. The whole family got political asylum, claiming credible fear. No sooner did we give them lawful status, they went back to Russia. Obviously, they weren't telling us the truth. And then you have Ray Kelly, the chief of police, the commissioner of the NYPD, calling Faisal Shahzad, this blew my mind. Faisal Shahzad, he called him a classic example of a homegrown terrorist. This guy came here on a student visa at age 20 from Pakistan. How on earth is somebody who comes here at the age of 20 homegrown? Well, he's homegrown if you want to make people forget about the immigration factor, just like with the measles, by the way. We're being told it's about the parents not inoculating their kids. Every program is bringing on doctors, and the whole debate now is about inoculation. We didn't have this outbreak last year, did we? We didn't have it the year before, and you had parents not inoculating their kids. This is not a new phenomenon. You know what's new here, Jamie, that no one's talking about? You had the tens of thousands or perhaps hundreds of thousands of unaccompanied minors who ran that border just a few months ago. You had that massive outbreak of the enterovirus, similar to polio. It killed some American kids. It left some children paralyzed. But what do they talk about? Not that we have aliens coming into the country who haven't been inoculated and are bringing disease, but that the parents are to blame because they didn't inoculate their children.
Absolutely. And also, by the way, when I brought up Charlie Hebdo massacre, just a metaphor and analogy that can be used here, I think, to the best of my memory, some of them were actually born in France, and they grew up there, and they turned into radicals and terrorists. But even in that case, our society is handicapped because it is not honestly looking at this terrorist ideology and removing them from society.
Well, not only that, but if they have a French passport, then they can enter the United States under the visa waiver program. You know, I've been screaming about the visa waiver program during my congressional testimonies. Why on earth do we even have a visa waiver program? If you look at the 9/11 Commission staff report on terrorist travel, and you look at the 9/11 Commission report itself, visa fraud was a huge deal. How do you give out visas? There's got to be tightening of the process. On 9/11, we had 26 visa waiver countries. Today, Jamie, we have 38. Chile became number 38 March 31st of last year. The reason for this increase in the number of visa waiver countries almost entirely is attributable to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They have partnered with the hotel, hospitality, travel industries. They are pushing a program that they call the Discover America Partnership. What they seem to have forgotten is that Al-Qaeda, ISIS, have already discovered America. So in order to fill every seat on an airplane and every room in a hotel and all the seats in Yankee Stadium and in ballparks across the country, they're willing to destroy national security so they can make some money. It's absolutely, there's no other word, treasonous.
Well, Michael, for instance, if you were put in charge, let's say during 9/11, let's say during the time of the Boston Marathon Massacre,
Yep.
and during that time period, you were able to implement the kind of policies that you think are effective in protecting this country, and your orders and recommendations were followed to the last dotted I and crossed T, 9/11 and the Boston Massacre would not have occurred.
No, in fact, I did my first hearing, believe it or not, 4.5 years before 9/11. So I want everybody out there to imagine this. I testified on May 20th, 1997 on the issue of visa fraud, immigration fraud, because of the 93 attacks. It was clear to everybody that that's how these characters came into the country and were able to hide themselves in plain sight, or in the parlance of the 9/11 Commission, embed themselves. The Clinton administration did absolutely nothing to address that vulnerability, which set the stage for the attacks of 9/11. We are more at risk today than ever before. And you have Senator Feinstein saying, we need to look at the visa waiver program. We need to look at it. You know, it took us 44 months to win the Second World War. We had to build fleets of ships and airplanes, atom bombs, you name it. We did it 44 months. We were attacked in 1993, 22 years ago, almost to the day. This is now February. We were attacked on 9/11, 14 years ago. And we still can't secure the border. We're ignoring immigration, and we're ignoring the 9/11 Commission. You know, if you really want to give most of these knuckleheaded politicians a fit, here's a basic question, and watch how they dance. Why aren't you using the 9/11 Commission report as the starting point for any discussion about immigration? How's that for a question?
Exactly. And Michael, my point was, and also everything that you're saying, what the conclusion is that the left that's behind these failures has blood on its hands, because by not acting, it's part of the problem, and there is an enabling of the terrorist attacks against us.
Oh, I agree, but you know what? The right's not doing too well either. You know, the Republican leadership has been talking about rule of law and how this undermines the Constitution. Why aren't we hearing from them that it also undermines national security? See, most Americans don't care about rule of law, and I can prove it to you. How many people have radar detectors on their dashboard? If you have a radar detector on your dashboard, you don't believe in the rule of law, really. So it's an argument that could be used to throw bricks at the administration, but their goal is also to open up the borders because of commerce and the people that are pumping money into this. You know, Gates and Zuckerberg have pumped over $1.5 billion into comprehensive reform because they want to get cheaper programmers. And in fact, what most people don't know is that in addition to providing identity documents to millions of people whose identities can't be verified, which is nuts, it would also triple the number of H-1B visas. So think where that's going.
Michael, we just have a couple minutes left.
Sure.
A person says, sleeper agents, sleeper cells, that's not even a problem in America. What do you say?
That's like ignoring the guy that ignores cancer. And
tell us the extent of the threat. Tell us why this is a serious thing. What's going on?
I'll give you a good example. The FBI just put a naturalized American, a Somali, on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list. They are seriously concerned because this guy left the United States 2 years ago to fight in the Middle East. He was a cab driver in D.C. And right in the FBI report, it talks about how their concern is that this guy's information, knowledge, experience of the infrastructure in D.C. would give him the opportunity to come back and attack us because he is so intimately familiar with our streets. You know, most terrorists want to have mobility and camouflage, a driver's license, and a commercial conveyance, school bus, ice cream truck, taxi cab, airport limo. These are the sorts of vehicles that they drive. And meanwhile, you've got states giving driver's licenses to illegal aliens. They should be getting the MVP award from ISIS.
What are they planning to do, Michael? What's a scary scenario that when it comes time to act, what are they planning to do?
We saw it in France. I worry about what happens when people start getting dragged off the street in cities around America, and the same kind of violence that we're seeing being carried out in the Middle East, the burnings and the beheadings. How would we react if that happened here in the United States and they took somebody off the street and hit him in a building somewhere and did this?
Well, Michael, I think that if we don't act, it's only a matter of time.
Oh, absolutely. Look, the clock is ticking. Time is not our friend, and our politicians need to be made accountable. You know, in the days and weeks after 9/11, remember how many of them said someone needed to connect the dots? The dots had been connected, but boy, oh boy, we've really connected them now, and I want to know why they're still not acting.
Okay, Michael, let us suppose that we are liberated from Obama. Somebody gets into the White House that actually loves this country and wants to protect it. They phone you and they say, hey, listen, I want to do something about sleeper cells and sleeper agents. What's some of the first moves I need to take? Very briefly, what do you recommend?
Interior enforcement has to be beefed up. Hire many more agents. Get out there. Make the arrests. Make the contacts in the communities. We used to have our ear to the ground as agents because we knew every community. We had experts in every ethnic group. We kept the streets safer. And you know who was made the safest, by the way? The immigrants, because the international criminals, the transnational gangs, set up shop in the immigrant communities of every ethnicity, whether it's the Russian mob or the Colombian cartels or whatever. So by being out there, we know what's going on, we can cultivate the informants that we need, and we can use the immigration laws as a very effective tool to go after the bad guys. We have absolutely given up a very important component of national security by ignoring immigration law enforcement from within the interior.
Scary times, and how grateful we are that we have a truth teller shining the light on such a serious problem. We pray that something will be done about these matters that you've shown a light on. Thank you so much, Michael Cutler.
Sure. One quick thing. You know, I always end my programs by saying democracy is not a spectator sport. When you listen to this, folks, if it motivates you, start working the phones. Reach out to your elected representatives and make certain that they understand exactly what's expected of them and what's required of them.
Absolutely. We got to get Americans off the couch to participate in defending this country and our civilization. Thank you, Michael Cutler, and we'll see you.
Privilege to join you.
It's an honor to have you as a Glazov gang member, and we'll see you next week on the Glazov gang.